Good morning, peeps. Today we do our last coffee painting. Next week we're going to do mandalas. And yeah. Today's painting we're going to do more realistic than yesterday's. If you don't have brushes at home, you would remember that I used cotton buds yesterday, and to get into tiny places like these little pointy parts here, I pulled out the front to create a little point on the earbuds. Alrighty, and the background, if you don't have brushes, you can do that with a cotton ball or a piece of sponge. Okay, I'm gonna start by doing the background first. I've decided to change the background from the reference picture and make the bottom part a little bit darker, and because this part of the picture is lighter and I want it to stand out, and the top part a little bit lighter because the top part of the picture is lighter. Okay, but first you can pause here if you want to copy my line drawing first, because it might be easier than working from the reference picture. Okay, and I need you to pause here if you want to do that, because I'm going to erase or lighten my lines first. Okay, now for the next part, I'm going to work wet in wet on the background. Sorry, meaning that I'm going to wet the paper with clean water first around the edges. I'm not going to go over the edges of my actual picture. I'm going to work around that and then paint onto the wet paper before it dries. Alright, I think I'm just going to turn it around a bit quickly to do the top part first. Alright, so as you can see, even this watercolor paper buckled a little. Because we were working wet in wet, the paper will do that. Okay, I think now, oops, there's a bit of a smudging, it's not completely dry there. Okay, remember you can use a hair dryer to help your painting dry quicker. Okay, I'm gonna move to the bottom part now and do exactly the same. Make sure that everything is completely dry, and as I've said, use a hair dryer to help you with this. You can see there's a little watermark here. It doesn't really bother me because it's right on the edge. I can crop it out, so that's fine. The rest looks good. There's a little bit of a ripple effect down here, but it's actually nice. I like that it can stay. Okay, so now we are moving forward. And I'm going to let's do the bottom part first. I just want to lighten these lines a little bit more because the shell pot thing is it's almost pearly. It's quite light. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is the whites I'm going to leave open. I'm going to work wet in wet again here, and I'm going to use the lightest shade of coffee again. But this time you might need to, because it's small areas, you might need to scrape off some of the water on your pencil, on your brush, before you start painting. Because it's really, really small areas that you're going to wet with the clean water now. So let's begin, and I'm basically going to work 1 or 2 areas at a time. I think I'm going to leave that now. We're going to come back to this area later. Oh, let me just now that I'll finish with the rest, because we need to add some shadows too. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry now and then come back to it later. So this is dried pretty much, so I can continue. Now I'm going to work wet on dry to add a few of the shadows, and I'm going to move up. For this layer, I've used the lightest shade of coffee. For the next layer, for the shadow parts, I'm going to start with the second lightest one. And this time I'm going to work wet on dry, meaning that I'm not going to wet the paper first. I'm just going to paint on the dry paper. And I'm still scraping off, because it's small areas, scraping off most of the paint before I start painting. Right, so now I'm going to use, let me check, The shadows here is not exactly as dark as the shadows up there. So I'm going to use for the shadows here more of the second darkest shade. Don't know if you can see. More of the second darkest shade and only a little bit of the darkest shade for these shadows. Right. I see the darkest shade is a bit shiny when it dries. Anyway, we're going to start work there now on the petals, and I'm again gonna start by leaving open the whitest areas, for instance around the edges of this petal, and paint the rest, start defining the shadows with the lightest shade of coffee. You can see there, the lightest one there. Okay. So let's start at the top. And I'm going to work one petal at a time. Now don't jump right into the darkest shade. There are two more in between, okay? So we're gonna work with those two now to properly define all the shadows before we jump into the darkest parts. The darkest shades of coffee we're going to use in the tips of the petals that are really dark, for instance there in that one and here in this one, and for these parts underneath the leaves we're going to use the darkest one, and we may need to layer them actually, but for the rest of the petals we're going to use the other two shades. All right. Right, so now I'm ready to go to the second darkest shade on the petals. I think I'm done with the actual succulent plant now. So now I'm going to work on these very dark areas here with my darkest shade of coffee. And I may need to layer a little bit to get it as dark as it needs to go. I think I'm pretty much done. If I want it more realistic than this, I can work a little more on it, especially here on the pearly shell thing. I can work a bit more on that, but I think this is fine for now. I will now sign my painting. And that's that. I hope you enjoyed this. From next week we're going to do mandalas, as I said. And enjoy your weekend, guys. See you on Tuesday. Bye.